I'm fascinated by this because as you were speaking of his understanding, I kept running through my head the advertisements I hear from universities as they attract students, and I find that they often have two themes. One is that you come here and we'll give you the power to change the world. So it's that power. We're going to empower you to do something that is wrong, to change the world that's wrong about the world. And the other one is that you're going to have access to a sort of unbounded opportunities because you've come here. And implied in all that are concepts of freedom, that you are going to be a free person because you have these powers. If I understand what you're saying about Maritain, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you cannot be free without virtue. That freedom is necessary, that virtue is a necessary condition for freedom properly understood. And that non-virtuous people are by definition not free. And therefore, one of the purposes of education is to, in fact, give you freedom in the sense of giving you the virtues that make it possible to structure your life to know who you are and how to live well as who you are. If that's true, and tell me if I've erred in my analysis, if that's true, then the promises of the universities are not as they suggest about freedom, but about enslavement. If the goal is just to give you power to do something that you want to be a producer, to be a creator of something, but it neglects the very conditions that make you fully formed and to cultivate the capacities that are given to you by God, then in fact those universities are preparing you for something other than freedom.
Well, again, writing in 1942, Maritain warned that one of the potential effects of an overly pragmatic view of education is that it becomes enslaved to trends, right? So to the extent that we have schools and universities, Maritain wanted those schools and universities to, in some ways, stand outside of the latest political current or the most recent increase in jobs in a particular sector, right? He wanted education in terms of schools and universities to pass on knowledge that's timeless and prepare morally virtuous, educated people to participate in whatever part of society their personal vocation is calling them to. So he's concerned that curricula or university policy not be overly trying to predict the future or a priori determine what kinds of skills will be most valuable. You know, in some of his work on integral humanism, where he looks at, again, turning back to some of his political philosophy, he talks about the hubris of thinking because we know a lot that we know exactly where we stand in this moment in history. And therefore knowing exactly not only how to teach the young about timeless things, but how to tell them what their role is going to be, right? He's concerned that one of the misconceptions of education is that it becomes too political, that it becomes an arm of the state, that it becomes an arm of a political project. And this had disastrous consequences in communist Russia and in Nazi Germany. They had very effective educational systems in the scientific, technological, military concept of that term. But education became subjugated to a political project. Schooling and universities did. And so Maritain is again speaking to the United States of America in the midst of the Second World War. He's specifically addressing people in a nation founded on the ideals of freedom and the democratic republic system of government. And he is saying, in order for your great experiment in human freedom and democratic government to survive, you must protect schooling from becoming a political project that's all about altering the today.
Have we?
I would say if Maritain were alive today, he would probably echo his warning, which maybe is what I'm doing. I think that universities and even schools at the K-12 level, not all, but in many cases, have come to see that in order to be important or to fulfill their duty, they must take political stances in an overt sense, such as by writing, letters or making political pronouncements. And my concern is that we need to have education in schools and universities that are focusing on what I think Maritain is calling us to focus on, which is the development of the moral character of young people. I have participated in seminars where people propose that we don't do moral development of children. We write children's books with political activist themes. And I think what Maritain would say, and I would echo this, is no, that's not the role of schools. The role of schools is to form that inner dynamism of the child, of course, to make moral judgments, but not to tell them what the right and wrong answers are, but to give them the capacities of right judgment. Because, again, if we don't do that, Maritain says, we can habituate people to playing the right role as a protagonist in some kind of social or political movement. But that can be so easily warped for an end that goes beyond what the promoters of those programs might wish. So Maritain, again, in his definition of the human person and his definition of education, is saying that the role of education and schooling and the role of teachers is to form a human person armed with knowledge, prepared in virtue, to participate in society, but not to give a political program to education.